Welcome back, friends. So I told you guys a week or so ago I would tell you the story about why I didn't like being a paid structural firefighter. I got my microphone in my hand here. I don't have any pockets in this shirt to hang it on, so I'll just hold on to it here so we can have some nice, clean audio. All right, I've also got Sweet Loaf Duty here, so she might be roaming in and out as we're talking. Let's go back a little bit. I'll give you a little history. So it must have been around 2000 or so. I had been, well, almost all my life working in construction. At that particular time, I was a traveling construction superintendent. I was overseeing construction for super high-end retail stores in big cities. So I was on the road, I don't know, 10 months out of the year or so, maybe 11. It was a great job, paid a lot of money. It was not a good job if you wanted if you were going to have a family, but I was single at the time, so it wasn't really a problem. So I was really over construction. I had done it so long, and I just wanted to do something different. And I was always kind of drawn to military, police, fire, that sort of thing, but I hadn't really done anything with it. I actually tried to go into the military twice. I told you when I was 17 that I tried to go in, and then was probably in my mid-20s or so, I tried to get into pararescue with the Air Force. I was doing the 50-meter underwater swim. Hi, baby. All the stuff. I had crushed the entrance exam, what was required. Well, come here. You come hang out with Papa. I'm sorry about that. Jack's watching the Sweet Loaf here. I'm gonna take. I promised her I'd take her for a ride as soon as we get done here. But anyway, I was trying to get into pararescue, and I was super fit. I was getting up like 4:30 in the morning and riding like 20 miles on my bike, and the whole swimming, a ton of time of swimming. Swimming, I would actually ride to the pool every morning and swim and swim and swim because I wanted to be able just to get all through that. Well, I was just about ready to go in, and I had a physical, and a guy basically one of the PJs up there they have a little spot up there at the Portland airport. Basically told me that with my eyesight, I could never get in. This was before they were really accepting LASIKs or anything like that. And I think what I was told at the time is if you had any surgery like that at all, it was going to kick you out. And I wanted to go in. However, if I couldn't at least try to go in at the highest level or at least have that opportunity, I just wasn't interested. Had I tried and failed and not made it and had to settle for something else, that would have been fine, long as I had done it. But I didn't want to go in and not have the chance. So I started I was really a disappointment for me. And then I looked at the fire service, like, well, I'll get into the fire service. So I started to look at what is it going to take, and I didn't have any idea how competitive it was. I think the first department that I tested for was in Portland, and it was, I think there were close to over almost 4,000 people that applied for the job. It was ridiculous. It was like the hiring process was done at the convention center. There was a line that rivaled a Star Wars premiere of guys going in for these few jobs. There was like 17 or something like that. So I never did get any calls from that. And so I thought, well, what I should need to do is need to make myself more qualified. So I enrolled at night school and started going through EMT school. Unfortunately, I never went to college. I graduated from high school and I went right to work. I didn't have any of the prerequisites that I needed to even get into the EMT school. So that was another great disappointment because I wanted to start it. I wanted to do it now. I had made up my mind. I had resolved to do it, and yet another delay. So I think I had 3 semesters where I had to do prerequisites, meaning I had to bring my math up, and I don't remember what the classes were, just to get to the spot where I could enroll in the EMT school. So I did all of that, working all day and going to school at night till 10. It was really a grind. And I finally got into EMT school. I went through all of that, went through the basic, went through the intermediate. And the whole time I was volunteering with different, like when they would have big concerts and things, I would volunteer as a medic and just to get as much experience as I could and to make myself look appealing to a fire department. After I finished up EMT basic, I went into intermediate, as I said, and learned to intubate and IV and that sort of thing. It was back then there were 3 levels. There was EMT, there was intermediate, which did everything that an EMT did with the addition of intubation, some frontline cardiac meds, and IVs. And then after that was a full-blown paramedic, which is a whole nother deal. So once I got through my EMT intermediate, I started putting like lots of applications out all over the country. I mean, I was just spamming, basically spamming them before spam was spam. This was snail mail. And two came back. One was in Anchorage, Alaska, and one was in Summit County in Colorado. So I had to make a choice. Which one? Basically, they were offering me an interview, nothing more than that. Well, I decided that I would go with the Colorado, and they set up an interview. They said, "Can you come in?" And I said, "Well, not really. I'm in Oregon. I could come in, but it's a pretty big expense for something that's not a sure thing for a job interview." I asked them if I could do an interview on the phone. So I forwarded all my information, my credentials, and all of that. And I remember it. I got the phone call. I pulled over on the side of the road. I was in my truck, and we had like a half-hour interview. They said thank you very much, and within 24 hours, they had offered me a job. So I quit what I was doing, loaded up everything that basically all my possessions. I had a 93 Toyota Tacoma 4-wheel drive pickup with canopy on it. Loaded up everything and drove straight to Summit County, Colorado, and right into my job. So that's kind of how I got there. It was not a real big department. They had 3 stations, lots of paid guys, medics. It was a real legit engines and trucks, the whole thing, legit fire department. So yeah, that's a long ways to that's the history to get where I'm at. Now I want to answer you or tell you why it was not a good job for me and why I didn't like it. And I'm going to say this up front. Anything that I say that's derogatory is personally relates to me, and that's how I felt about it. It may not be your experience. It may not have been the experience of other people who work there, although I think it was with some of them. Anyway, so started working, went right on to B shift, and man, it started very exciting. The very first day, I am we get to a medical call, and we show up to a full-blown cardiac arrest. And because I am an EMT, an intermediate, even though I don't have very little field experience, mostly just clinical stuff and working in the ER a little bit. I am the lead medic on this because everyone else on the engine, and there was 4 of us, were basics. I'll tell you what, you hear the stories about, or you see on TV and movies and stuff, where something like really traumatic happens and the time seems to slow down. It's like stretching out before you down a hallway. It was like that. I mean, I just walked into the room and there is this woman dying in cardiac arrest on the floor. And I'm supposed to do something about this. And I'd never had anything like this. And so I felt like I had stood there for an age, like time just stood still. And finally I got myself going and we went to work on this patient, which turned out to be a victim. I asked my lieutenant the next day. I was like, "Oh, I apologize. I must have stood there for an age. I wasn't mentally prepared for this." And he said, he looked at me very strange and said, "What, you didn't? What do you mean?" That was in my mind. That's how I perceived it. Time actually did stand still. But what I did is I went and basically fell back on the training and just went through the process, right? So there was that. So yeah, that's how it started off. And I thought, man, this is going to be quite a job. I'd never done anything like this before. But what I found out, it was boring, beyond boring. I worked about 10 or 11 days a week. We would work 1 day on, 1 day off, on, off for 6 days, and we had a 4-day. 4 days off, and then you would rotate it again. Great schedule, right? Well, it was really awesome. I was working like 10 or 11 days, 24-hour shifts, and I really got to take advantage of Colorado. I mean, I had so much time off, and I did a lot of mountaineering. I climbed a bunch of 14,000-foot peaks, and I was skiing and snowboarding over 100 days a year and working as an instructor and patrol, and it was awesome, right? That lifestyle up there is pretty cool. But the job was boring. It was I just every morning showing up at the same time, seeing the same folks, and washing the same engine if it needed or not. I guess what I kind of didn't like was all the busy work. wash the bathrooms just because we want to see you doing something. Be moving around or organizing something that doesn't need organized just because we want to look busy, and it just doesn't have any meaning. And you're just living and dying for calls. You're waiting for calls. And when the calls do come in, they're some medical, granny can't get in her chair, or and then just when you think you're going to get a night's sleep, Friday night the bars start letting out about 2 a.m. and the drunks start fighting, and then you're out all night running and dealing with slobbering drunks and bad people, and just it 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 was not a very nice job. Where are the fires? Where are all these things? Occasionally you would have a car wreck, where you could go in and do something, but it was few and far in between. Occasionally you'd have a fire. I think we had two the whole time I was there, and that was fine. But mostly it was just running, just like being a nursemaid, just running, people calling, oh, my pipes are leaking, or oh, this or that, or I can't get my door open, so there was things like that. I used to get really aggravated and frustrated with it, thinking, man, why are these people wasting our time, and can't they handle these things yourself? Do they have to they have to call the fire department? And my chief said, you know what, you're looking at it wrong. You got to look at it. These folks have reached the end of their ability to deal with that situation. They probably don't have any family to call. Maybe they're old and they're sitting alone by themselves, and there's water on the floor. They don't know what to do. They have reached that ability. They have no longer have the ability to deal with the situation, and we're the only people they can call that will come and help them. And that helped me a lot. And I wasn't quite so resentful towards those calls after that. So there was the boring aspect of it. There was the repetitiveness of it. There was the doing the busy work and all of these things. And there was also the command structure. And this is my own fault and my own hang up. Someone that has been basically self-employed for as much, if not more, than the time that I wasn't. Going in and being a little bit older and dealing with the command structure and taking the lead or command from people that are a lot younger than you, or people that maybe you don't even respect. Maybe you don't respect their abilities, or you don't think that they deserve to be there where they are, but you find out they're there because of who they knew, is tough. I think it would be easier for a younger guy. You can adapt better. You don't mind being told what to do. But when you are older and you've more accomplished, and you've had employees, and you've run multi-million-dollar jobs and been responsible for all these things, to go in on the first day and having a guy that's 10 years younger than you, tell you to go wash the wheels on the fire engine again because he saw a speck is, well, it's galling, to say the least. So there was that side of it, which that was more my personal hang up than anything else. And then there was the folks that I worked there. I thought that there was going to be a brotherhood. And again, this is not indicative of all fire departments. There are guys that have a really tight brotherhoods, sisterhoods, whatever you want to call it, and enjoy the people they work with. But this place that I worked in I will give you this analogy. I think I'm not a sports fan. I didn't grow up. I'm not interested in sports. I don't watch any. We don't play ball sports. We're just not that type of people. But the sports analogy is good. I think, when the early teams, whether it be the Green Bay Packers or your local team, whatever that was, when you saw the guys that were living in the community, excuse me, living in the community, playing on the team, that built a sense of family and camaraderie. I mean, when those guys were playing and those guys were winning or losing, I mean, you were wearing your heart on your sleeve because you knew these guys. They were your folks, right? They were your guys. Well, now, yeah, yay team, we have the sports teams and all of that, but we got the free agent thing, and we've got guys that are there not because they love the town or they love the people. They're just mercenary. They're there for a paycheck, and the moment someone offers them more and they're no longer contractually obliged to be there, they'll leave. I mean, we've seen it. There's, of course, exceptions to everything, but it's hard to get really excited, and go team and yay team, and this is my team, when all these guys are, who knows where they're from, or not, or maybe even not even Americans, right? So, and I think that the fire department was kind of like that. It was guys were there. They would show up. Many of them didn't even live in the community. They would, because the job was he had so much time off, they would drive hours away. Some guys would drive 3 and 4 hours away and come and work there, and they would leave, and you never saw them. They weren't there for your your birthday parties, or they weren't there to go hang out or to go, have dinner with or anything like that. They came in. They were there for the lifestyle. They were there for the money, and they were there for the probably more than anything the good schedule, right? So again, exceptions to it, but there was a lot of that. And then another thing that really tore up the department where a lot of guys got along really well, and we would trade shifts with one another and help one another out and all of that. And then a couple girls came in to the department, and it was trying to be more diverse. We need to have more women, and so they hired girls, women, excuse me. I don't mean to be sexist here, but they hired, but these were girls. They had these girls not because they were the best candidates, but because they were female, and there were a lot of guys that didn't get the job because of that. So that kind of that kind of rubs you the wrong way. You don't. That's not super fair. And before we go any further, don't bring me this nonsense that there's no difference between men and women, and women can do just as well as men can do in every job. This is not the case. As soon as an all-female women's team can win the Super Bowl or take on a heavyweight champion in boxing, then then you can make that claim. But until then, don't sell me that. Don't tell me that. With that being said, I'd rather live with one than any of these other strong guys, right? So let's keep things in perspective here, right? But they weren't really able to do the job. We had one that was 125 pounds or so. She couldn't pull her weight. She couldn't pull the dummy. She couldn't make it up a flight of stairs with a SCBA and a hose pack. And so we had to carry more slack. We had to put up with her. And also we had to go into dangerous situations with a female that was too weak to pull us out if we had gotten into trouble. So there it is, right? I didn't have a problem dealing with that. It was like, okay, so we compensated in different ways, and we had very frank conversations about it, and we made a decision for her to pursue engineering and to run the deal, right, or the engine. Further problem was, we were pretty top notch. Our engine company, and we worked out a lot, and I was like 225 pounds and just ripped and in the best shape of my life, and doing 14,000 foot peaks at 10, running up those things in a day, and in best shape of my life. Well, when the females came in, they dropped all the standards, and that was kind of a bummer. It's like, yeah, we were trying so hard, and now it's like it doesn't really matter anymore. And the worst thing that happened, and if you have small children, you might want to hit mute for 60 seconds or so. I'll give you a chance to. I'm not going to use bad language. It's just an adult topic here. All right, we're back. Started sleeping around. They were very promiscuous, two of them, and with multiple guys, from multiple stations and multiple, all these things, and that caused a whole lot of problems. So you had guys that had one time had been buddies, and now they're jealous rivals, and they hate one another, and it's starting to break down all the cohesion of the department. And then you had guys in there that weren't, or women, I don't know who it was, that weren't very honorable, and you would bring food for the refrigerator, and you'd show up, and someone had eaten all of your food without asking or without leaving a note or anything, and it got so bad that people had to actually lock up their food. Here we are in this so-called brotherhood, and that we're supposed to be able to trust one another and have each other's back, and we can't trust them not to eat your Lucky Charms, right? So, there's that, so there's all these things building up. We have the boring monotony. We have nepotism, which was a big problem. We started to see promotions and advancements being given to drinking buddies that were maybe hanging out or schmoozing with officers rather than the best candidates. So it was cancerous. A cancerous, toxic environment that continued to get worse and worse and worse. And I thought, well, all right, well, I'll just stick it out here, and I'll get some experience, and maybe get my paramedic and let the department pay for them. And I think the thing that kept me going was that's where I was introduced to wildland firefighting. A lot of small departments in rural areas like that will contract out. So they'll have some engines or some of the apparatus, and they'll send it out to these federal forest fires to make extra money for the department. Because a Type 6 engine, which is like a 1-ton truck with a 300-gallon tank on it, can make $2,000, $2,500 a day, and that includes the crew. So we as firefighters, that were paid firefighters, got to go out and make some extra money, and that wildland firefighting really appealed to me. I'm like, yeah, that's what's cool. not this structural firefighting. It wasn't for me. Not that it's not cool. There's a funny thing. There's a little joke I'll tell you. So why do we need wildland firefighters? Well, the joke goes, because the structural guys, they need heroes too, right? So that's always a big hit. Anyway, structural firefighting is way cooler. but excuse me, wildland firefighting is way cooler. Structural firefighting is okay, but it's a lot safer. If you get into trouble in a structural fire, you can jump out a window and you're safe. But if you're being chased down 60 miles an hour by a towering firestorm, 300-foot flame lengths, yeah, you get the picture. So there was all this stuff, and it was a resort town, and it was so expensive to live there that nobody could really, on a firefighter's salary, you really couldn't afford housing, or you'd have to go a long ways away. And so they subsidized some of our housing. So they had some nice apartments there, and we had to share an apartment with one of the other guys, but that was fine. We had a little kitchen deal in your own room, so not a big deal. I was single anyway, so it didn't really matter. And then I guess the straw that finally broke the camel's back was that the chief hired this woman to come in, this woman that worked in the office, and she was kind of in charge of all the facilities and all that. And she came over and came in our house, for a surprise inspection, and she's poking her nose around, and we were, my roommate and I, we were tidy people, we were clean people, we're not dirty people, and she was poking around, and she turned her nose up and told me that I need to go in and scrub my bathtub because it wasn't clean enough. That was it. I mean, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna work for someone. You're going to come into my house unannounced, and you're going to tell me how I'm supposed to run my affairs on my own time. That was it. I quit right there. I went down there and I quit. I turned in my paperwork. I turned in my gear. I loaded up my stuff and I drove back to Oregon. That was it. I just wasn't going to have it. That's my story. I mean, there's a whole lot more to it. There were good, there were bad, there were sad, and all of that. And it was a relatively busy station, and I ran a lot of calls and all that. But it was boring. A lot of the employees that worked there were mercenary. There was a cancer that came in the department with hiring people that were not able to do the job, but just because they met a particular minority quota, they put everyone else at risk, and on and on and on. So, yeah, that's my only experience. Is that the case for all fire departments? Is that going to be what you're going to run into? I don't know. I can't tell you. I do have friends that have done it a long time, a whole lot longer than I have, and they've been happy. Some more have been not happy. So I don't know. I don't tell you. It's a pretty good gig. I mean, if you can get in hired with a department when you're 19 or 20, you only serve 20 years, and you're out. You can retire. You could retire at 40 with a pension and all those things if that's what you want. But those 20 years, you're going to have to deal with probably a lot of the things that I did. And it's even more political now. It's going to be more politically correct, and sensitivity training and all of that stuff that all takes away from your joy and takes away from being able to do the job effectively. So that's it. And I'll finish this video with saying, I am 50% responsible for this negative experience with the fire department, because going in as a more of an entrepreneurial type of a person that likes to be rewarded for actions and deeds rather than seniority or just time spent in a particular position, it was not a good fit for me. So if you're that type of person, I probably wouldn't recommend it. If you're the type of person that's happy to have some monotony and security and nothing very exciting and slow promotion and all those things, I'm not really selling it very well, am I? Yeah. I do have a bias. I didn't enjoy it. I don't recommend it. For me, that was it. So that's all. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.